Episode 2 of Key Points. Welcome, everybody. I'm Andy Rogers, VP Business Development. The latest guest is the one and only Brian Murphy. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, Eddie, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Great. Yeah, great topic today. It's going to be definitely one that's near and dear to your heart specifically. What are we talking about today? Building and managing teams for IVD platform development. IVD is core to key tech and vitro diagnostic platforms, definitely core to key tech. If this is your first episode watching of Key Points, the first episode was evaluating assays for automation. Great topic. Check that video out with Jeff Gunnarsson. But today, Brian and I are going to be chatting about building and managing teams to develop these complex products and bring these assays to market. So, Brian, welcome.
Thanks. Happy to chat as always.
Yeah. Is this your first podcast?
Possibly. I think I made a brief appearance on public radio many years ago, but I'll let people check that down the road.
Nice. Cool. Well, before we get going on the topic, I wanted to bring up your role here at Key Tech. Can you tell everybody a little bit about your role?
Sure. I wear many hats at Key Tech. I think most people know me as an engineer, a project manager, but the other main role I play at Key Tech is VP of people.
So, Brian, you're recruiting actively right now, and so we'll tee off the first question for you. Pretty straightforward. If you're trying to get an assay on the market, from a lab that's been kind of manually pipetted to an automated system, what sort of disciplines do you need for those teams to get that assay from bench to market?
So kind of think of it, me starting from the evolution, right? Someone in a chemistry lab, in a biochem lab, is developing the very basic building blocks of that assay. So that's going to be all of, what reagents are you doing? What reactions are occurring? What types of samples are going in? And so that's people with strong backgrounds in biochem, strong backgrounds in molecular diagnostics. But then you have to merge that with all of the various other disciplines that do the automation. So mechanical engineering, computer engineering, electrical engineering, you've got the industrial designers and usability engineers. It's a broad team.
Definitely. Talk a little bit about, the blend of, so there's the blend of disciplines, but what about the blend of seniority in those teams? All the kind of different things you need to get that has to get done. What's the blend of seniority to take this assay from bench to market?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that doing assay translation from benchtop to products probably involves the same type of diverse seniority team that you'd probably want in most other companies. I think it's fair to say that in any team, you always want a mix of seniorities. People with real world experience who have been around a long time, who have diverse backgrounds, have worked on many other products, that those senior people are core to a project. They bring so much experience, so much wisdom, but you also need, younger, more junior people. They bring new ideas into the mix. They've experienced with the latest technologies. I feel like a team composed of only junior people is never going to get there, and a team composed of only senior people is never going to get there. I think that hybrid model, it is valid, and I'll go out on a limb and say you can apply that to probably any other business out there.
That's great. Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, you need that mixture of running tests, getting data, and forming, design decisions that need to be made by folks who've done it before. So, what does it look like when you're out? I know you're leading recruiting at Key Tech, and maybe you can chime in a little bit on helping our clients as well who are recruiting for junior and experienced folks. Like at Key Tech, what does it look like when we're recruiting for our team?
That's a huge question. Maybe we can hit on some high points. Number one, identifying where you're trying to find good candidates from. We primarily recruit out of schools, and we've put a lot of thought into what schools we recruit at. That works really well for Key Tech, but it's possible that other companies may want to recruit out of other pools. Maybe, people who have been in industry longer. So I think that first part is making sure you're recruiting at the right place. And then another big step is identifying how are you actually going to evaluate candidates, right? What do you want to be doing in this interview to assess someone? How do you best assess, does someone have the skills you need to do the job? And so mapping out that interview process and that interview plan, who's involved. You can easily interview people and ask all the wrong things, and then of course ultimately hire the wrong people. So maybe those are the first early steps. Identify the place, identify the questions. But there's probably about 300 other steps after that. Happy to keep chatting about that too.
Yeah, no, Matt, I liked your key points, hence the name of the podcast. Yeah, we probably should get a drum set in here for that. Sound effects. Cool. So yeah, we're talking about building teams here. So you need a multidisciplinary team. You need a team with a blend of experience, and you've got to make sure you've got that engine running, the recruiting engine running to fuel, right, your project teams. So let's say, we're not quite switching over to managing a team yet, but let's talk about just more challenges with building a team. So at Key Tech, I think, we've both been here for many years. I think we've seen that engine running, but we also see our clients building teams as well. And I'll chime in on, we want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges with building these teams and what we've seen and how to sort of mitigate those challenges. So the one that I see the most, and probably is the genesis for talking to someone like Key Tech, is timing. How do you know you can't build an IVD team, with a snap of a finger? So timing, I feel like is always challenging. So that's one challenge. What are some other challenges, Brian? You hit it on training our team. What have you seen, in working more intimately with our clients, with them building their team, maybe after they've hired it?
That's a great point. You're totally right. The timing is important. You can't just hire people in and expect them on day one to be fully spun up on the project, fully integrated with their team. And you need to build that team ahead of time. They need to have experience working with each other. And they need to be able to know each other's styles, know each other's strengths and weaknesses, and kind of complement each other. So I think that's a great challenge to overcome. There is that timing. I think another challenge is making sure you've got good, diverse backgrounds, diversity in all regards, education, gender, racial, seniority. We talked about all these different things bring together a good mixed team that's going to help you if you're brainstorming or trying to solve a particularly challenging problem. Obviously, it's not quite as much of the starter of building a team, but there's obviously a retention issue. You need to have great, interesting work to give people if you're going to hire the best people out there and tell them that your company specializes in the funnest, most interesting work. You have to fulfill that promise and bring in the funnest, most interesting work. So obviously that relates to retention.
That's a great segue, Brian, into managing a team for IVD platform development. So now that we've built it, let's talk a little bit more about managing. And I agree, retention and training and performance, like each of those three areas are paramount for hitting your milestones. So, you've led a couple of these projects. I know you're leading a few of them now. Talk a little bit about managing a team. Like what are some of the, critical skills of leading an IVD platform development program as a leader of that project?
Number one, making sure you've got the right people in the seats on your team, right? If you're thinking of this from the leader's perspective or project manager's perspective or any organization, right? You can't, if you start with not the right people, you're going to struggle from that point out. So, I know we're kind of transitioning off the recruiting topic and more the managing topic, but it's maybe before you move on to management, you have to make sure you have the right team. And because that's going to matter so much. I think also thinking heavily then about how you delegate tasks out to those on your team. Ideally, you have a great team and therefore you can constantly delegating out, letting people run sub initiatives, sub activities, that's how you get people working in parallel. I think fostering a great dynamic among your team. I'm gonna plug the Key Tech values here and say, I think, at Key Tech, those are a way that we make our teams work well together. We have one value which emphasizes respecting and supporting each other. And I think that's crucial to a team, right? If people can't respect and support each other, they're never going to be able to build off of each other. We also, emphasize having fun. I think that's another great way that we make our teams effective, is to make sure there's some fun in it. And I think the very best clients we've worked for also seem to internalize that idea of having fun. And, at the end of the day, what we're doing is hard, right? Developing products is hard. Bringing new technologies to market is hard. And it's very easy to get wrapped up in all of those challenges. And if you lose sight of having fun through the process, it can really demoralize your team. So, taking on those challenges in a fun way, in a respectful way, and in a creative way, I think is what keeps the energy in a team.
Got it. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's why a lot of people, like to work with Key Tech. But so let's talk a little bit more specifically about these teams, right? So the customer customer is kind of leading the assay development, like 10 times out of 10 with Key Tech. And what I would say are the ideal sort of arrangements for these types of projects, where the customer has an assay team and Key Tech has the hardware, the firmware, software team, design, industrial design, human-centered design team. So what is the optimal arrangement for working with an separate assay team and a separate hardware team? What do you think is the optimal arrangement, or how to work together, since they're by definition kind of separate teams?
Yeah, I think number one would be close and frequent communication. You probably can't communicate too much. Inherently, both of those teams come at things from different perspectives, right? The assay team is focused on, what do we need on the biology and chemistry side to make sure this assay is working perfectly? And the engineering side is probably biased in their own way, and their own side. What do we need here to make sure that this instrument functions properly? And those are fair biases. We all bring our biases to any situation, but the more we can communicate in any kind of situation like that, and again, I'm going to generalize to any organization here. When you have, your biases like that, if you can be touching base frequently, it's very easy to understand the needs of the other person. So, if you have a weekly meeting, or even sometimes intense parts of a project have daily stand-up meetings where you're getting together to talk through, okay, the assay team says they need X, they need these temperature set points, or they need this amount of mixing. And the engineering team can easily say, here's why that's doable or not. And similarly, the engineering team may come in and say, hey, we can give you this much power in this portion of the heater, but we can't do more. I think if you're constantly talking with each other and syncing up about priorities, what's most important, what's going to make or break this device from the engineering or assay side, and understand where everyone's coming from, I think then you're going to get to, the optimal sweet spot of the product.
Like communication, I sounds like what you're describing is, I would hope, more on the front end of a project, where, we use the term de-risking, right? So what are the risks and what are the trade-offs for requirements? So you've seen daily stand-ups, assay team spinning back requirements, and the engineering team saying whether they're feasible or not.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the requirements are kind of the written way to document all of those different interactions and debates you have. And so, yeah, establishing really good requirements, I think, it gets a rap for being the most boring part of a project, laying out the requirements, but it's kind of like, it's the vegetables you have to eat in the meal. And, but if you do it and you stay true to those, then, you really can have a good product.
Yep. Totally agree. Requirements are a must. And we could have our whole podcast about requirements if we wanted to, but I don't know who would tune in for that one. So,
yeah, we have to keep this funny.
Yeah. You've managed some very challenging projects, ones where, obviously there isn't a clear solution up front. That's why Key Tech is hired. But how do you, as a leader of these projects, like keep team members engaged and motivated, right? When sometimes, the data just conflicts with what, the client thinks it should say, or things just aren't working. How do you as a leader, both, how do you keep the team members motivated? We'll start with that first. Cause I think this is what happens when you're running IVD programs, right? Things don't work.
Yeah, inherently, we're working on cutting edge new products. If everything worked all the time, those devices would have already been invented years ago, right? Inherently, the things we're working on are things that have not existed to date. And therefore, some of those are going to pan out, some aren't, or at least it's going to be a bumpy road as you kind of find what hurdles, you uncover the next layer of the proverbial onion, and you have to dig down to that. I think the way to keep people motivated is to keep in mind the big picture. What are you trying to solve here? What's this product going to do? How many people is it going to help? Pause and you step back at those challenging points and you kind of zoom back out to that 30,000 foot level and you remember, the impact of this potential product. I think that's what motivates people. I remember during the multi-year development of Genmark, particularly on the Genmark side, the staff at Genmark put in very long hours, really putting their hearts in that product. And I remember the leadership of that company reminding everyone regularly that this product was going to change lives. It was going to save people. It literally was going to stop people from dying. And I think every time I heard that reminded to the staff, it re-energized people and kept them motivated.
Cool. And it worked out in the case of Genmark. And as you and I have seen on other projects, they don't pan out. And that's also progress, right? If there's a promising diagnostic or sample prep technology that's worth pursuing, we'll help our clients or work with clients to explore that, but they don't always pan out. How do you know or describe how you, as a leader of a project management program, evaluate if things aren't working? Like, how do you figure out whether it's the assay, whether it's the hardware, whether it's the software? I guess just talk a little bit more about like kind of debugging, if you will, like when there's multiple members of a team. We're talking about managing teams now. We built them, now we're running this project, and certainly the team is motivated. But when things don't go well, how do you work with multiple disciplines to kind of figure out, the root cause of these challenges?
Yeah. Solving that is the same as debugging anything, right? If you're debugging a piece of software or a mechanical fixture or debugging a cross-disciplinary platform. And then I think it's classic isolate variables, right? If you've got 10 new things you've introduced in this latest prototype, and all of a sudden the prototype's not working and it did in the last prototype, I realize I'm kind of stating the obvious here, but isolate variables, figure out, how can you turn off 8 or 9 of those 10 new things and just test one of those at a time, whether that's changing code, whether that's, all right, let's shut down the subassembly here, whether that's on the assay side, one of those 10 things might be, oh, we tweaked chemistry. We're using more surfactant than we used last time. All right, well, use the new fixture. Let's switch back to the old ingredients that went into it. Take out that surfactant, see does that change it. It's amazing to me how many years into a career you can go, you still come back to that same problem solving method of isolate variables, take one change at a time, go back to a point of design that works, and stepwise move into it to figure out what thing changed it.
Yeah, it seems like that's what we're doing all the time, right? Early on with these tough projects is root cause analysis and breaking it down or building up, right? As you have confidence, introduce another layer and see what ultimately breaks it, or you need to study further. So appreciate that. So, I guess any other comments on managing a team? I mean, you've talked about communication and inspiring people and a little bit about like the, debugging approaches. Any other insights? Do you have any other insights, I guess, on managing these multidisciplinary, multi-location teams?
I think understand what motivates people.
Yeah.
Right. Understand what's driving the people on your team to want to be successful. Are they doing this because they believe in the mission? Hopefully. Are they doing this because they really enjoy their specific task they're working on and they want to see that task succeed? Are they doing this because they enjoy working with other people? Right. And that's what makes them successful and motivated. I mean, in many ways, if you're being a great leader, you're understanding this for each individual on your team down to that nuanced level.
Right.
And then you're working with those people to to leverage what makes them great, but also understand that for this person, what they want most is to be in a large group, working with others, is that personal interaction that makes them happy every day. For this other person, it might mean getting a test to work correctly and getting good results. That's the thing. At the end of the day, it'll make them go home happy, want to come back the next day. And you could probably expand that out to kind of cross company interactions too. If you're working with someone on another company, same thing there. What do they want to see to feel successful? And how can you make them happy in that way?
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. No, I think one other area that you touched on it earlier is like keeping things fun. So, and we hear that a lot, that our clients, they like to work with us. We're actually fun to have dinner with and drink a beer. I guess, what are you doing maybe like week to week or month to month to kind of keep things light and fun on the team?
Yeah. There's probably two categories to that. Obviously there's some specific one-off things you can point to that are fun and silly. We have, for good or bad, we've, done some silly April Fool's pranks over the years of, taking a device and rewriting the firmware to make some strange sounds or play the Star Wars theme or something like that. Those are those one-off things that are fun. But April Fool's only comes once a year. And if that's the only thing you're doing to have fun, you're not going to get there. I'm very much a believer in that second category that I was thinking of, which is just the day-to-day small, very literally 1 second interaction things that make things fun. Being in a meeting, keeping it lighthearted, keeping it jovial, remembering that there's never going to be an end to the action items. There's never going to be an end to the work that needs to get done. And so just try to enjoy the moments, enjoy the interactions, enjoy the meetings, and keeping just a general positive. That's probably also a good personal philosophy outside of work. We could all embody, but I feel like it's really true in a project. And I think a lot of us, you hear a lot of laughing in key tech meetings. And I think that goes a long way to bring the fun.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely deep. IVD platform development is like life, but in a way it is, and vice versa. Right. So cool. Well, yeah, definitely. I appreciate your time, Brian, sharing your insights. And yeah, I don't think there's much else to add here. So again, thanks for chiming in on building these teams. You mentioned the action items never end, the recruiting never ends, and the managing fortunately does come to an end. But, I think, we do a great job at it. So thanks for sharing your insights, Brian. Appreciate it.
No problem. Happy to chat anytime.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time on Key Points. Talk to you later.